Hi everyone, very good evening and welcome back to CAIIB Grade B. So in this particular lecture, we are going to talk about infrastructure and then we'll be also talking about the National Mission on Sustainable Agriculture, right? So these are the two things. In the infrastructure related case, we'll be covering different dimensions of infrastructure along with some data to prove that particular thing, right? So let us start with infrastructure. So see, whenever we talk about the infrastructure, there are common things that appear in front of us. For example, road related infrastructure, railway related infrastructure, right? Aviation related infrastructure. So these are some of the things that appear in front of you. So let's start and discuss one by one what is the level of this kind of infrastructure in our country. What is the standing of our country, right? So these are the things that we are going to discuss today. India has the second largest road network. See, so India is having second largest road network with a total of 5.89 million kilometers. This road network transports 64.5% of all goods in the country and 90% of India's passenger traffic. So for the goods related transportation, 64% of the transportation happens through roadways, right, as well as 90% of the passenger traffic also moves through the roadways, right. So passenger traffic, because mile to mile connectivity or from doorstep to doorstep connectivity, roads are the better way, so that is why the passenger traffic is more over here. The allocation for Ministry of Road Transport and Highways has seen 25% increase set aside for it in the Union Budget 2024. The road connectivity, it is going to be provided particularly vulnerable tribal group under the Prime Minister, Pradhan Mantri PVTG Development Mission. So this was the scheme that was launched in the budget of 2023, right? So especially particularly vulnerable tribal groups, there are 75 tribes which are considered as particularly vulnerable, and hence there has been separate scheme launched for them. Now let us see what have been the steps that were taken over here. See, number one, national infrastructure pipeline. So the government of India, they have aimed to invest 111 lakh crores on the infrastructure sector during this particular period of from 2019 till 2025, right? So this is the time period for which national infrastructure pipeline will be implemented, and over here the expenditure that has been aimed to set aside is approximately 111 lakh crores. Out of this, 18% of the funds, they shall be allocated for the road sector. So when you will see the allocation, there is allocation for the energy sector as well, but out of it, out of this total allocation, 18% goes towards the road sector, and that is what we need to discuss over here, national infrastructure pipeline. Moving ahead, and talking about Bharatmala Pariyojana. Bharatmala Pariyojana, what we are doing over here? So we are constructing umbrella project for the highways sector, right? So Bharatmala Pariyojana is aiming for constructing as many highways as we can in our country. Next is PM Gati Shakti scheme. It is also called as National Master Plan for Multimodal Connectivity. It is a platform, right? So your PM Gati Shakti scheme, it aims for speeding up the process, right? That is the main aim of this particular scheme, that is PM Gati Shakti scheme. More coordination, more speed towards the progress. So that's what over here, it brings 16 ministries together. This is the aim. So it brings 16 ministries together for the planning and execution of infrastructure projects to reduce the logistics cost. So this is the aim of PM Gati Shakti scheme. Moving ahead and talking about what are the other steps that have been taken for the road sector. This is north-south, east-west corridor. The purpose of this particular project is to connect northern and westernmost parts of our country to the southern and eastern parts of the country respectively. It involves cities like Srinagar, Kanyakumari, Kochi, Porbandar and Silchar. As the name itself suggests, this particular step has also been taken for connecting the roads related infrastructure north, south, east, west corridor. Followed up with Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana. So this particular scheme was introduced in the year 2000 with the goal to provide all-weather roads to unconnected rural areas. In this particular scheme, there are many other components as well. For example, there is a component for the left-wing extremism area as well. For the constructions of road over there, we have seen a lot of phases of this particular Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana. इसके बहुत सारे phases आए हैं and right now we are in a third phase of this particular program. Now next, let's talk about infrastructure. That is, in infrastructure we'll be talking about railways. What have been the newest steps taken for the railways, right? So being the third largest network in the world under single management and with over 68,000 routes in kilometers, Indian Railways strives to provide safe, efficient, competitive and world-class transport system. Traffic revenue, it is expected to comprise 99.8% of the total revenue. Furthermore, 68% of the traffic revenue it comes from the freight services. ठीक है, so freight का थोड़ा ज़्यादा passenger traffic का contribution is less, whereas freight traffic component is more. Freight related revenue is more, and that contributes to 68% of the revenue. Now next, what have been the steps that were taken? One by one. So in the railways, the Kavach system, it was announced in 2022 Union Budget as a part of Atmanirbhar Bharat initiative. Around 2,000 kilometers of rail network, it is planned to be brought under the indigenous systems to enable safety and capacity augmentation in the year 2022. See, right now we just very recently, 6 months back, we have seen a train accident in Balasore, and at that particular moment it was realized that if Kavach system was implemented everywhere, then this incident could have been avoided, right? So that is why an anti-collision related thing, they can be what you can say enhanced through this particular Kavach system. Next, in what you can say infrastructure, we have two things that combines infrastructure as well as agriculture, and that is called as the Kisan Rail. So this particular component was also introduced in the infrastructure. You will also see one more thing called as Krishi Udan. ठीक है, Krishi Udan as well as the Kisan Rails, they have been what you can say brought into the picture to bring the agriculture as well as the infrastructure together. So Kisan Rail were introduced to provide the freight services to agricultural commodities. Under this particular initiative, 157 trains they have been introduced on 8 routes for transporting more than 49,000 tons of commodity. And then there was a helpline number also introduced for it. Railway has introduced helpline number 139 for all the security related assistance to the passengers. Now, a little bit about the committees as well. So following the Bibek Debroi committee recommendations in July 2020, Ministry of Railway declared 151 trains and 109 pairs of route, they will be operated by the private operators, and the first private train began in the year 2022 between the Coimbatore and North Station in Tamil Nadu and Sainagar Shirdi in Maharashtra under the Bharat Gaurav scheme. So this talks about the privatization in railway. So which particular committee recommended the privatization? This is your Bibek Debroi committee. They recommended privatization over here. And what was the scheme under which the privatization first private train started to operate? That is your Bharat Gaurav scheme, right? After this, we need to talk about agriculture markets. So electronic national agricultural market, also called as ENAM, right? So right now in all the states we have APMCs related infrastructure, agricultural produce marketing committees. APMC infrastructure is there. Now in these APMC infrastructure, what was the hindrance? Hindrance was regarding the what you can say these APMCs have cocooned themselves in their states, and it hinders the freedom of the farmer to go and sell the produce outside their what you can say state mandis, or also called as the APMC's market. So for that matter, in order to bring the uniformity as well as to connect all the markets in all over the nation, this particular overarching infrastructure of ENAM was brought in. Okay? So what is this? So electronic national agricultural market, it was introduced to connect all the regulated wholesale produce markets through a pan-India trading portal, right? ENAM is a trading portal, and what it is connecting? It is connecting the wholesale produce markets. That means your APMC markets, they are being connected through this particular ENAM. Ministry of Agriculture and Farmer Welfare, they have launched Electronic National Agricultural Market Platform on July 2022 as a mobile application in 12 languages. Right, moving ahead and talking about the other markets like e-governance portal called as the EggMarkNet. So it is a government to consumer e-governance portal that caters to the needs of various stakeholders like farmers. It connects farmers, industry, policymakers, academic institutions by providing the agricultural marketing related services as well as the information in a single window. So ENAM works as a trading portal, right? And EggMarkNet acts as an information portal, right? So there is a difference between both of them. The kind of services that are being provided on these platforms, they differ. Next is Kisan Credit Card Scheme. So it provides term loans for the agricultural needs. So this is also one of the steps that have been taken. Moving ahead and talking about the other markets. This is Gramin agricultural markets called as the GRAMs. So over here you will see in the ENAM what we were connecting was APMCs. That means the wholesale markets that exists in the states. हम wholesale markets को connect कर रहे थे. यहाँ पे हम village based markets को connect कर रहे हैं. So this is the scheme about the Gramin agricultural markets. Efforts are being made to develop and upgrade the existing 22,000 rural hearts into grams. Right? So these rural hearts, we are converting these into grams so that there is a connectivity in among these. It will be linked to ENAM and they will remain outside the APMC Act regulation so that intermediaries, related coercion and the other things which hinders the farmer to get the optimum price for their produce, all these things happen in the APMC's regulated market. So this is why we are keeping grams out of the APMC Act regulation. ठीक है, इससे बाहर रखा जा रहा है और हम इसको किससे जोड़ रहे हैं? We are connecting this with the ENAM. ENAM से इसको connect कर रहे हैं. Next is formation and promotion of farmer producer organization. So over here, under the one district, one product cluster to promote specialization and better processing, marketing, branding and export, scheme for formation and promotion of FPOs. This scheme is to create 10,000 FPOs in 5-year period. That means between 2019 to 2024. In this particular 5 period, we are aiming to create these producer organization so that the farmers can better bargain as well as get a better price for their produce. They can have a bargaining power on the terms and conditions that are applicable to them. So this is the intention of this. Market intelligence and the early warnings portal, MIEWS portal. Over here, market related news will be provided, and this is also one of the steps towards the digitalization. Seamless connectivity through Kisan Rail and the dedicated freight corridors. So we already know about the east corridor as well as the west dedicated freight corridor. The items, why these freight corridors are being made, because the other railway infrastructure or the railway lines, they were being utilized towards their, what you can say, even more than the 100% of their capacity, and that is why freight related trains were getting delayed, and obviously these were creating the problems in import and export as well as the transportation of goods. And that is why dedicated freight corridor, they were came into the visualization in the years of 2006 to 2008, and after this implementation happened and this whole process took place. Then we have this model act was passed. Now this model act, these are passed by the central government, right? And states have, what you can say, states have the option if they want to adopt this model act or not, right? It is not a compulsion on to them to follow this particular act. It is where, what you can say, it is totally voluntary for them if they want to adopt it as it is, if they want to adopt it with some modifications here and there, right? So model agricultural produce and livestock marketing act 2017, it aims to replace the APMC act 2003 because it is regressive, right? Intermediaries role has not been defined, as well as there are restrictions on farmers selling their produce outside the APMC market. So that is why there are various problems in this particular act, and for that purpose this model act came into the picture. Again, I am repeating, these are passed by the central government, but these are not compulsory on to the state governments to adopt. If they want to adopt, they can. If they do not want to adopt, they can leave it. Okay? And create a single agri market where the single license one can trade agri produce as well as livestock. It causes better price realization by the farmers, and this helps in doubling the farmers' income by 2022. Okay. Now let's talk about the rural electrification. So Government of India, they have launched the Deen Dayal Upadhyay Gram Jyoti Yojana in December 2014 for the rural areas with the objective of electrification of unelectrified area as per census 2011. Now what has happened under this particular scheme of Deen Dayal Upadhyay Gram Jyoti Yojana? Agriculture and non-agricultural feeders, they have been separated, right? So this is for the power distribution, because obviously agricultural sector is also a major consumer of the power, and that is why the agriculture as well as non-agriculture feeders, they have been separated. The another feature is strengthening and augmenting the sub-transmission and distribution infrastructure in rural areas, including metering of distribution transformers wherever meters were not there. So this was also one of the intention of this particular scheme. Next, rural electrification as per CCEA approval for the completion of the targets laid down under the RGGY. They ensure the rapid electrification, feeder separation, and strengthening of rural distribution infrastructure. Now, what are the other schemes for this particular rural electrification related components? So, next such scheme was Gramin Vidyut Abhiyantas, right? So, these were basically rural electrification engineers. So, whenever you are introducing any sort of technology, you also have to introduce something to correct it, right? So, this is what it is. To transparently monitor the process, the central government has appointed several Gramin Vidyut Abhiyantas or rural electrification engineers from the same areas, right? Next, we have the scheme of Saubhagya. So, Saubhagya scheme, this was launched with the objective to achieve universal household electrification by providing the electricity connections to all unelectrified households in the rural areas and all poor households in the urban areas of the country. So this was for both rural as well as the urban areas of the country, wherever electricity is not present, to give electricities to all such areas. Beneficiaries for the free electricity connections and identified based on the 2011 socio-economic caste census. Unelectrified households, those were not covered by the socio-economic caste census, they are required to pay 500 for an electricity connection. It could be recoverable by the DISCOMs in 10 installations through the electricity bill. So this means There were charges for all the people who are not covered through socio-economic caste census. Those people are also eligible for the electricity connection. Yes, there are charges and they would be collected by the DISCOMs as per the installment basis. Now, Rural Electrification Corporation Limited, it is a designated nodal agency for the nationwide implementation. Gram Panchayat or the public institutions in rural areas, they are responsible for the application process as well as the documentation. Now let's talk about the agricultural economy. So yes, share of net irrigated area, it accounts for 49% of our net sown area, that we also know. The Indian agriculture sector, it has been growing at the average growth rate of 4.6%. That's also we know. RBI study has told that 28% of the agricultural credit is still provided by the money lenders, traders and the relatives. And when it comes to small farmers, nearly 60% they have access to the bank loans. Now next is role of Indian agriculture. Let us see what is it. So major source of employment. Now over here we are witnessing that what is the role of Indian agriculture in India. That means in what kind of ways Indian agriculture helps Indian economy. So number one, the foremost important thing is obviously the employment source. So about 60% of our labor force, it is directly involved in the agriculture sector. Okay? It is directly involved over here. In terms of employment, only the fishery sector supports the livelihood over 28 million people in India, especially the marginalized as well as the vulnerable communities. Next, it is the source of forex earning. So you can always see that whatever are the top 5 exports out of India, you will see marine products in every year they get the ranking of either the second or the third most what you can say exported commodity out of India, right? So these are so that is also a source of forex earning in the year 2021. The exports of agriculture from the India, it grew by 18%. Marine products export from India is targeted to reach the US $14 billion by 2025. So that is also what you can say this is a role of Indian agriculture, that it is earning the crucial forex for India. Agriculture helps in the supply of raw material and food and development of Indian industrial sector. Various employment opportunities and economic development is also catered through agriculture sector. Now let's talk about the issues that are there in the agricultural sector. Many of the issues we have already discussed, right, while we were discussing the topic, but yes, there are still a lot more. Let us do that. First of all, uneconomical fragmented land holdings. The small marginal land holdings, that means those who are having lesser than 2 hectares, they account for 72% of the land holdings as per the economic survey of 2019, right, which is a major limitation to reap the benefits. Next is the credit availability. We have already seen an RBI study which tells that formal credit is still not that much prevalent in the agricultural sector, or you can say the rural areas. They still depend on the informal credit, जैसे कि money through many lenders, etc. Falling yields due to inadequate inputs and information. The declining area, diversion of agricultural land for the non-agricultural uses, that is also one of the causes. Why? See, people are increasing, population is increasing, but the area under cultivation, that is decreasing. Then we have high inputs cost, deregulation of the fertilizer prices, important thing. Deregulation of the fertilizer prices, right? Reduction in farm subsidies, because our subsidies related bill was very high. So that is also one of the causes why agriculture is facing issues in it. Next is low farm revenues, climate change. Out of the total net sown area, 60% of the land under cultivation is dependent on the monsoon, right? So irrigated area is also less. 60% of the land when it is dependent on the monsoon, then you can expect remaining area is irrigated, but the other areas they depend on the monsoon and hence the productivity is also impacted. Now next is the faulty implementation of the government policies. Let us see that. Example, oppressive APMC acts, MSP related policies, stock limits, एसेंशियल कमोडिटीज एक्ट में जो आपकी स्टॉक लिमिट्स थी वो तो अभी रिमूव कर दी गई हैं. लिबरलाइज्ड एग्री इंपोर्ट पॉलिसी, ineffective insurance and credit related schemes, right? Lack of awareness about the scheme. So these have been so many issues that have contributed to the, what you can say, problems in the agricultural sector. Then we have investment issues, inadequate public investment and private investment, inefficient MSP structure. So let us see the data regarding this. Only 6% of the farmers they get the benefit of MSP, and the remaining 94% they are dependent on the markets. You see, the MSP related benefit is so much restricted. Only 6% of the farmers they are getting the benefit of the minimum support price. Lack of enabling infrastructure including cold storage, warehouses and agro processing, etc. Research and development, less than 1% of the agricultural GDP is spent on the research. So yes, India is very much behind when we talk about the gross expenditure that is incurred on the research and development, and that is really low. Rural distress and farmer suicide. So as per the NCRB report, over 8,000 farmers and 4,500 agricultural laborers they have committed suicide, right? Now let's talk about the agriculture as well as the industry linkage. So this linkage comes through when we get एग्रीकल्चरल प्रोड्यूस इनटू दी प्रोसेसिंग. ठीक है, सो जब हम एग्रीकल्चरल प्रोड्यूस की प्रोसेसिंग करने जाते हैं और व्हेन वी से दैट वी गेट इनटू दी फूड प्रोसेसिंग, दैट इज वेयर एग्रीकल्चर एंड द इंडस्ट्री लिंकेज कम्स इनटू दी पिक्चर. सो फूड प्रोसेसिंग इंडस्ट्री, it is one of the sunrise industries which is having the enormous significance in India. Now let us see. Development of food processing industries, there is employment opportunities especially in rural areas and all of that is there. Though 70% of the food processing industries they are in the unorganized sector, they only contribute 15% in terms of value. See, the value in the volume related thing, unorganized sector is high when we talk about food processing industries, but yes, value position में organized sector is way above. Means the value creation that the organized sector brings into the table, that is something which is more what you can say commendable. Now food processing increases both forward as well as the backward linkages in the agricultural value chain. Forward and backward linkage क्या होता है? Suppose there is an industry over here, right? This industry requires a raw material. So linkages with raw material related industry, and then packing material or the bifurcation or the further processing of the goods. This is what something we call it as the backward and the forward linkages in the value chain. How you are creating more and more value in the goods. It creates business farmer linkages by providing a market for the farmers produce and supplies raw material for the processing. Now what is the significance? Let us see this. So India, it is the world's second largest producer of fruits and vegetables after China, but hardly 2% of the produce is processed. See, only this much. So we are way behind in the food processing, or we can also say in the taking the agriculture to the industry. We are very what you can say, we are the leader in food wastage, but in the food processing we are very much behind. Although we are the second largest producer of the fruits and vegetables, in spite of the large production base, the level of processing is low. 2% of fruits and vegetables, 8% of the marine, 35% milk and 6% poultry are processed. As per census 2011, the total urban population constitutes 31% of the population, and that exemplifies increased disposable income. India also produces nearly 16% of world's total food grain production, and that is why we are having one of the largest producers of the agriculture produce. All this data indicates that there is a very high scope for the industries to operate efficiently and to create the backward as well as forward linkages. Now next is agriculture industry linkage scheme. Let us see that. So Prime Minister formalization of micro food processing enterprises scheme. This is the scheme that has been introduced, right? So it aims for promoting vocal for local in the sector under the Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan, launched in the June 2020 to support 2 lakh micro food processing units with credit linked subsidy with a total outlay of 10,000 crores. Right, now what are the other features of the scheme? Let us see that. So over here we are providing seed capital for the self-help groups, right, at the rate 40,000 per member, and purchases of small tools maximum up to 4 lakh rupees per self-help group, so that unorganized sector can be converted into organized sector. Then we see one district, one product. The states would identify the food product for a district, keeping in perspective the focus of the scheme on perishables. Then we have Operation Greens. See, the Ministry of Food Processing, they have been implementing Operation Greens with a budget of 500 crores. Now, what is the orientation of this particular scheme? It aims to promote the farmer producer organization, develop infrastructure for tomato, onion and potato, that means top products. It has now been expanded to include 22 perishable products to enhance the value addition and the agricultural exports. Originally, it was intended for these 3 crops. Those are very much variable into the nature, and later on this has expanded to other things as well. Let's talk about the foreign direct investment policy. So yes, FDI up to 100% under the automatic route, it is allowed in the food processing sector. These are all the steps that have been taken for the improving agriculture as well as industry linkage. Agriculture and the processed food Products Export Development Authority, EPIDA. This particular organization, it works under Ministry of Commerce and Industry, right? So it is an apex organization and it focuses on the export of scheduled products. It also works for the improving the linkage between the agriculture and industry. Then there is a food processing fund by the NABARD. Let us see that. So a special fund in the NABARD that is having a worth of INR 2000 crores. It has been designated as the food processing fund, and it was set up in the year 2014-15 for providing affordable credit to food processing units in the mega and designated food parks. Then we have National Institute of Food Technology and Entrepreneurship and Management. So it is a higher education institute in Haryana deemed to be university, which is operating in the Ministry of Food and Processing Industry. Then let's talk about FSSAI under the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. They have issued Food Safety and Standards Regulation 2011, which prescribes the quality and safety standards respectively for the food products. So this is also an area where agriculture and the industry, they come into what you can say in a sync. So these are the regulations that have been given by the FSSAI, right? Now, existing infrastructure like the Kisan Rail and the Krishi Udan, as well as the vast networks of SSG and FPOs under the Deen Dayal Upadhyay National Rural Livelihood Mission Scheme, they offer the opportunities to bolster the food processing efforts while also promoting the local foods and traditional products like the pickle, papad, etc. Next, is your National Mission for Sustainable Agriculture, and this is the topic that we are going to start tomorrow. Okay, not today. So this is it for today. Thank you so much for joining in, and we are going to start a different segment from tomorrow in the rural banking only.